You're listening to iCannabisRadio.com.
Welcome back, everybody. American Weed Realm Radio. It's been a while. I think we've been off the air for about 3 weeks now. Yeah. I apologize to everybody about that. I apologize to the pediatric group on Facebook, and for all of you other watchers and listeners, I want to apologize about that as well. Things have been a little bit crazy for us in the family with my dog. Unfortunately, my best little buddy, Ripple, got diagnosed with stage 4 T-cell lymphoma, and as far as canines, as far as dogs go, that's a rough one. So we've been dealing with that, but the little man is fighting it well. So if I could ask everybody out there, all of our listeners, to please send in good thoughts to my little buddy. He's fighting it. He's I might also add, and I may be speaking a little bit premature on this, but T-cell lymphoma, stage 4, is really the worst kind of cancer that a dog can get. It's the fastest. It's the most aggressive. And they'd really given him about a month. And we just went in today for one of his blood tests, and they took blood. And I had 2 of the doctors come out, and they said, "This dog is doing amazing. What's going on? Are you doing anything different than the medication that's prescribed, which is the steroids?" And they didn't know this, but I've cut his steroids in half. And what he's been taking is the realm of caring oil. He's been taking the THC oil at night, a lot of it. In fact, enough oil to put an elephant down. And he's been taking the CBD oil during the day at 3 times a day CBD, and then 1 time a very heavy dosage of THC at night. So he runs around wagging his tail, his tongue hangs out of his mouth, and he's pretty medicated, but he's one happy dog. And so, of course, I can't tell the oncologist at the veterinary clinic what it is that he's taking. I don't want to cause a whole lot of alarm and create, but they said, "We've never seen a dog this far down a diagnosis like this doing so well. All of his blood counts are normal." So I thought that was a good story to tell. Now, Ripple does not have his red card, so I hope that's okay. But it did get me thinking a little bit, because I was sitting in the Jen saying no. I was sitting in the waiting room today. And a few of the people, it's a very sad waiting room in the oncology department at any hospital, whether it's a veterinary clinic or a hospital. And a few of the people, one of the person looked across and pointed at me. And I said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "Are you that guy from that National Geographic show about marijuana?" And I said, "Indeed." And he asked me, he caught wind about what we do, and we got caught up in conversation, and I told him what I was giving my dog, and he said, "Oh my goodness, do you think I could have some for my dog?" So my light bulb went on, and I thought, oh my goodness, how about a cancer clinic for dogs, for pets? They have the same endocannabinoid system that we do. So anyway, I threw that out there. Obviously, I'm not going to follow through on it. Jen's sitting here shaking her head, telling me to shut up, because dogs do not have cards. But I was really excited about it, and I do want to.
They haven't paid their taxes, Josh.
Yeah. Well, they have. Dogs pay their taxes every day you get home. Unconditional love. Especially my little amigo. He doesn't go anywhere without me. He's my right-hand man. I call him a he, but he's really, he's homosexual. So, guys, I'm sorry. We have a great show tonight. We really do. We have a lot of ground to cover, and I want to thank all of our listeners out there for sending. We got so many questions in the last 3 weeks, and I've really filtered a lot of them down. As you all know, we try to focus on what the Pediatric Children's Group comes up with and the questions that they have, because new parents are being added all the time. It's a very strange, mysterious thing, giving your child a form of cannabis. Though it's non-psychoactive, it still pushes the limits. And so we really want to devote our time with the realm of caring, with this radio show, and with the oil that we produce to answering your questions. It's very important to us. So tonight we're going to start out with Science Corner. We're lucky enough to have Jennifer Murray in the house.
Hello.
Jennifer, it's good to see you again.
Oh,
honey.
You too. I know.
It's been a while.
And we got my brother, Jesse. I haven't even seen Jesse, I guess, in about a month. I had to go to China on business, had the Ripple situation dealing with, and you went to Hawaii, and you came back with a rat on your chin.
I did. I went to Hawaii for a couple days, actually 10, and relaxed and got to hang out with my father-in-law, and that was very relaxing.
Ooh.
It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I relish the times I can go and hang out with my mother-in-law. Yeah.
Anywho.
Next.
Don't have either.
Hawaii looked fun. You sent me some pictures of you jumping off some cliffs and things like that.
It was funny. I jumped off a 40-foot cliff and
40 foot. So, folks, that means 20. Go on.
A 40-foot cliff. And I sent it to my brothers, and my little brother Jared sends back a message says, "So you've been taking pictures of the locals, eh?"
I think I sent you a text back. It said 40 foot. No, I don't know. We used to do 100 feet blindfolded backwards, but that's no big deal.
No big deal. Yeah. No, I had a really good time. Great waves, great weather, lots of culture.
Well, Melikaliki Maka.
Yeah, or Ufagefe Maho.
Lay your coconut on Matiki.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
Anywho,
so we're going to get into some of these questions. And what I thought I'd do, since we had such wonderful questions, I thought we'd address these and we'd have a little roundtable discussion. We've got Dr. Shackelford coming here at the end of the hour to answer more questions. And I'd like to, these questions are so good. I'd like to tackle these and get Jen's perspective and what she's seeing, kind of what we're seeing as far as dosage and things of that nature. And I want to get Dr. Shackelford's perspective because, as you all know, Dr. Shackelford is never short on words. Then we have, for the first time tonight, we have an incredibly special guest. And I'm very, very excited to have her. Heather Jackson is going to be calling in, or we're going to call her. And we're going to be talking about her son and their newfound journey on the CBD oil. And her son deals with a form of epilepsy. It's not Dravet syndrome. And I'm going to let her tell you about that and tell you about their journey, their previous struggles, their current struggles, and just kind of her mindset and how this has changed the landscape of her life. So we are so excited to have Heather on the show. And she'll be coming in around 7:15. So I've rattled on enough. Let's get to some of these questions. I'm going to start here first with Jessica. And Jessica, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your last name. Jessica Fournier? Fournier?
Parlez-vous français?
Okay, she says, and Jessica's new to the pediatric children's site, and so I definitely want to welcome you to that site, the site that Rebecca Brown put on. And if any of you are curious about that, it's a site put together on Facebook for families and parents that are dealing with children with various forms of epilepsy and other serious conditions that cannabis and the concentrates can potentially help. So welcome, Jessica, and thank you for your question here. Let's see. She says she'd like to know which strain is most effective. For example, high CBD or a low THC for Dravet syndrome. And those of you that don't know, Dravet syndrome, very violent, rare form of epilepsy that is, it can cause 50, 60, 70 grand mal seizures a day. Our producer just knocked over the camera, looking at us sideways. We probably look better.
I know. He keeps trying to reposition. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, he's a perfectionist.
He is.
Yeah, you can tell that by looking at his hair. Okay.
He has beautiful hair.
I know. I was just kidding.
He's jealous.
Okay, she wants to know which strain is most effective. Example, high CBD, low THC for Dravet syndrome. How we as parents can find a grower that has that strain. So let's break this up. There's a little more to the question. The most effective strains. Well, that's an incredible question, and it's also a very incredibly difficult question to answer. We can break this down by state a little bit, and we do have some background on this. Jessica, for those of you that aren't aware, I personally have spent the last 2 years in a breeding project and developing a strain that is very, very high in CBD or cannabidiol and very, very low to non-existent in THC. And the reason that I bred this was largely thinking of the Dravet kids, okay? The epileptic kids, also for breast cancer, which CBD is showing to literally annihilate breast cancer cells in test tubes. Human trials haven't begun yet, but that's another thing that we hope to do very soon. And this strain, I actually came up with 2 strains in about 2 years, a little over 2 years. And these strains, unfortunately, they're landlocked in Colorado because we have to adhere strictly to the law in Colorado, and we're not able to ship seeds, sell plant matter, or anything else outside of the state. And if we could, we'd be the first people to do that, but unfortunately we can't. So in Colorado, the highest strain, and to my knowledge, and Jen, you can type up on this as well, and Jesse, but to my knowledge, I've successfully bred the highest level of CBD and the lowest levels of THC of any plant that has come out in the world. And our levels reached a level, I believe, last month or the month before, up to a 19% CBD level in its raw state. And I believe it was a 0.6 or 0.7, so less than a percentage of THC. This is the plant that we predominantly use whenever we're making the oil for our children. Call them our children, the Dravet children. And this strain we call that strain Charlotte's Web. Yeah, Jessica, that strain was named after Charlotte Figge, we call her Charlie, our little precious first Dravet syndrome patient. Charlie was 5 years old when she first started taking this back in March. And in between 90 to 99% of her seizures have diminished.
And she's been off pharmaceuticals now for, did she say 7 months? She just posted.
Yeah, I believe it's
6 or 7 months.
6 or 7
which is
months.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Off 100% of her pharmaceuticals. And so we're trying to come up with a cute name for the strain. And of course, the only name that fit was Charlotte's Web. And so that's what we have in Colorado. We also have another strain, the other one that we bred, I think brought it up to a 15% CBD. And a 0.3% THC. And that strain is called Cigna, which is named after our late grandmother who passed away this last May. And so those are the strains in Colorado. There's other strains that are floating around Colorado. One of the strains, and these 2 strains here, I know that I have seen and heard of people in Illinois, in Minnesota, and certainly California and Washington and maybe Oregon. I've heard of these other 2 strains which have high CBD and low THC, and those are Sour Tsunami and the Harlequin strains.
Nothing like you're talking about. I mean, usually it's 1-to-1.
That's correct.
Which
Yeah.
we also have a 1-to-1 strain.
Meaning ratio, okay? So
Explain that, Jen.
Usually, when a plant grows, I mean, again, you have to remember that Josh and these boys have been growing for 2 years and targeting this very hard. So usually the strains that are high in CBD, Harlequin, Sour Tsunami, Canatonic, Unicorn, R4 are some of the ones, but usually it's like a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 ratio in the plant.
Explain, if you will, a little bit the ratio of the plant. I think a lot of the parents get on the sites, and it's a confusing.
It is very confusing.
It's very confusing. People, 1-to-1, I need a 3-to-1, and how do I find this? And even 1-to-1's hard, but explain how the ratio works. And Jesse, you can help too.
Yeah, so 1-to-1 would just simply mean what you were talking about. If you had 7% THC, 7% CBD. So that's 1-to-1 ratio. So what you're talking about, 19 or 20, is basically 20-to-1 in a plant, which is phenomenal.
The highest that I'm aware of is what's the true tests that have come out of Israel, which was around a 15. And that was a 15.
15.7?
15.7. It was almost 16. And then it was a 0.9. Mm-hmm. So 16-to-1. We have a 20-to-1. We did spend a lot of time on that strain. We're very proud of that strain, but I hope that answers the question, because I have a lot of questions even right here. How do we understand the ratios?
Yeah, and again, it's the ratio, not necessarily the strain. So, for instance, Charlotte's Web, you created that strain. Mm-hmm. But a good starting place for these people that can go out and buy seeds or clippings or whatever were the following and high CBD, but that doesn't guarantee that it's going to be. So again, you really need to get it tested to make sure, because it doesn't magically turn into CBD making the oil, or at least none of us have figured that out yet.
Not yet. Let's talk about that. You bring up a good point, Jen. And Jesse, you may know a little more about this as well. I have in the questions always questions about, okay, I have a 1-to-1. How can I go into an extraction process and then take it to a lab, like we are fortunate to have CannLabbs here, Jen's company, but many people aren't. But how can we put this in an extraction process to up our ratio levels?
Really, the best way to do it is to start off what you're looking for. You want to know what you're looking for, what you want. When we have Charlotte's Web, for example, and we break that down and make it into an oil, we obviously take it in as dry product first to get it tested so we know what we're looking for. But with that strain especially, we're looking to get as little THC as possible because we're using that for the kids. But a strain like Northern Lights by Hayes, which is another one of our strains, which was, like Jennifer had said, is 1-to-1, that it doesn't always come out high, and we are working actually right now, Joel and I, on trying to figure out how to get rid of the that was a chair. Trying to get rid of the THC by heat and different sorts of temperature, light. And so we can increase our CBD, because this strain that we do have, while we have it, we don't have a lot of it, and it doesn't grow a lot like some of our other plants. So the idea is to maximize the CBD, because most people, including a company that was in here a while ago, Dixie Elixirs, have to go through a lot of product to get what they need.
Which is very expensive.
Very expensive. So if you have a high CBD plant, the best thing to do is to utilize that maximize it is to get rid of the THC also.
Because remember, you can always that's readily available. We've been growing for decades for high THC. So you want to maximize your CBD, and you can always add in a little THC if you want to make a bigger ratio.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do that occasionally. And Heather actually will, when we have her on, she'll talk about, we give her a high CBD oil, and then she's also asked for a THC oil so that Zakai can sleep. We have two options of doing that. We can put THC into it, but in this situation, she just wants him to take it at night so that he can sleep. So actually, today I dropped off a sample that Jennifer doesn't know about yet, but she will see that it is hopefully going to fall in that line of underneath 40 milligrams per milliliter, so that she knows exactly how much she's giving Zakai whenever he goes to sleep, because it really helps relax him, because he has night terrors, and we'll let her talk about that. But occasionally, like today, I made an oil, added some leftover CBD oil to it, simply to get a higher CBD that I can give to people that need it. But right now, we just don't have enough of it to give it to everybody the way we want. So hopefully this can introduce it to the system, and then after this harvest that we're in the process of pulling down right now, we'll be able to give everybody as much as they need. And we're really excited about that. This harvest is the most exciting we've had. I was just up there. Jennifer was up there 2 weeks ago.
Oh, my God.
And I was up there Monday. So
amazing.
Yesterday morning. And, I mean, the boys
when
up
you
there
say up there,
great.
we're talking about the Stanley Brothers farm.
The farm, yeah.
The most amazing, beautiful place that I've ever been with these plants. I mean, it was magical.
Yeah. I mean, I was telling Jennifer we have a 12-foot plant that's not even done growing yet. So the boys have put in a lot of work down there. It looks amazing. And the R4 or whatever, we have a bunch of different ones. Cigna, Charlotte's Web. We grow an R4.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. R4. We grow 8 different strains, R4 being the lowest in CBD quality of ours. But we have to we want to grow 8 different types of a high CBD so that we have different ways to offer it. I mean, obviously we want to get the highest as possible, But she's seen Jennifer as we bring them in. We bring in sample after sample after sample.
Yeah.
The idea is to get the best one. Charlotte's Web being the highest, Cigna being the next. We have Grammy's Girl, and a few others down the line that we've worked on. And so, going back to Josh's question, here in Colorado, our strain is certainly the highest. The problem with it is that we don't sell it in the store. This is strictly for
right. Which, can I add on that?
Form. Yeah.
So going to the grow, it was so eye-opening looking at the plants that were higher in THC compared to the CBD plants. I mean, we're talking about what, I was seeing 7 or 8 feet of THC, and then the CBD plants are 4 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, same amount of grow time. So the yield is so much smaller than the high THC plants. I had never seen, it in action.
And it's interesting for those out there that don't know. People want to know why a strain may cost as much as it does, and I've seen it out there as much as $60 an eighth. It's usually about yield. Sometimes it's all about name. In our situation, some of our best strains are $20 an eighth because we grow a lot of it. The R4 through the Grammy's Girl, through all of those, which we do not sell, and certainly not Charlotte's Web. I don't even know what we would sell Charlotte's Web for.
Oh my God!
There's not a price tag that we can even put on that,
right?
Because again, it's the highest in the world, and we're talking about the highest CBD content in the world. And right now, and I don't want to call it a craze. I mean, it's well deserved, but there's a CBD craze going around the world. They're just in the last couple of weeks. We're going to talk about this next week. They're finding that CBD is incredible in stopping cancer cells, and
multiple sclerosis. There's so many different things that CBD attacks, and THC attacks them as well. And we all know those. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. But CBD is the future. Trip at Dixie Elixirs obviously knows that. We know that, and so is the science community is coming on board and seeing that. It's exciting to see.
But real quick, so since we have been growing for decades for high THC, who knows how many cannabinoids we've rolled out of the genetics, though, that we could possibly get back that are just as good or better than CBD. I know I would like to test for CBC and CBG, but again, buying the standards, it's $500 for 1 mil. Mixed in methanol.
Right.
I mean, it is extremely expensive, and I just can't do that right now. But I hope that more people want to see that and start growing now for those other cannabinoids, which you'll never be able to tell unless you test your product.
That's a great point, and we're getting there. And whenever we talk about the scientific community, folks, I really, this is an important thing to note about this plant. We're talking about nature, okay? And when we talk about nature, we're talking about an infinite, okay? Think about that for a minute, an infinite number of configurations. And so when people say, oh, Big Pharma's going to come in and step in and mess this all up and start adding chemicals, well, sure they are, but they're never going to be able to harness the true benefit and the pointed benefits that we can have with this plant because of the infinite possibilities of configuration that we can come up with this. Now, Jennifer just said, a lot, for decades, we have spent breeding the THC up. See how high people can get, essentially, in a recreational sense, okay? And so in doing that, we've bred out or we've lost other, what we call cannabinoids. And now we're finding, the number was 70 just 15 years ago. Then it was 76. Now they're saying, oh, no, there's more than 100 cannabinoids in this. And so people like us doing this, cutting edge, I would say, because
Absolutely.
It hasn't been done to this plant before. But we're going to be able to do this for years and continue to find more and more applications, like the topicals that we have. We find that many times it melts off melanoma. We find that it's absolutely incredible for arthritis.
Neuropathy.
Dry sockets.
It's amazing how many things that we can use this for. Yeah.
It is. The iceberg hasn't come out of the water yet.
Well, and real quick along those lines, as far as growing for decades, just to give you an idea, in the 80s, THC kind bud, as it was called, probably had 5% THC. Right now, we're testing, I believe we've tested 131% THC. So that just shows you from 80s till now.
What's that strain called? Is that called Cancel Your Day?
Yeah, it's called, way too much. And that's, again, why people need to test, because not everybody, and one hit can be too much. So if you are smoking it. But, and in oils, we've seen over, 90%. It's ridiculous. So that just gives them people an idea.
That's part of the progression. I want to move on to the next part of the question Jessica sent over. Jessica, I hope that answers. And just to back up, Sour Tsunami and Harlequin, typically you can find those seeds, or if you can, also you can find cuttings of those. Those are some of the more prevalent. And I think the Sour Tsunami has been claimed to have up to a 12% CBD and about a 4% THC.
I've seen 15.
Have you seen 15?
But there's also, with Sour Tsunami though, there's a close genetic partner that doesn't show. So you kind of got to figure that one out. But Sour Tsunami's been up to 15, about 2 to 1 though.
And the Harlequin I've found has been between 9 and 11.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
9 and 12.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Unicorn
that's a little
there.
higher in THC at about 6.
Right.
I think. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So
but again,
still, it's good starting points. And so those are the two that I would point in your direction. The 1-to-1s like the Northern Lights by
NL by Hayes.
Northern Lights by Hayes. Those are out there as well for a 1-to-1 ratio. It's unfortunate that we cannot give this to everyone in any state. These invisible borders, boundaries, and lines and things like that. It's absurd to me, and it kind of reminds me as if we were living in the witch hunt era, in the 1800s, where we're telling parents how to make a concoction that can take away literally 80 to 99% of their child's seizures. And they have to do it at home. It baffles me every day, but I'm not going to get on that soapbox. I'm going to move to the next one here. Okay, where do we start off in terms? How do we find a grower that has this strain?
where is she?
That's a tough one. I don't know the answer to that. I know that commercially the Harlequin and the Sour Tsunami seeds are available in the states that I did mention, and I have heard about them in Minnesota. I've heard about them in Illinois, I almost want to say. I've heard about it in California and Washington, and maybe Oregon. I would bet that it's in Oregon. So I hope that answers that question. And move on to the next one. Where do we start off in terms of dosing? This is a very, very good question. Even my 4-year-old son's doctor says he has no idea. Is it just trial and error? Well, we've done a lot of trial, we've done a lot of error, and I have to thank the parents that we've been working with in this regard as far as dosing goes to come up with those types of numbers for you. And the trial and error, we've accomplished this through the help of people like Heather Jackson and Paige Figge and Nicole Villas and the parents that we work with. And so I want to thank them for that. And I'm going to start this off. Jesse can answer this question a lot better than I can, but I do want to let you know a good rule of thumb that we like to follow is 2 milligrams for every a pound of weight in the child or even the adult.
Is that CBD?
That is
CBD.
The CBD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, this is CBD. You don't know, not 2 milligrams of THC. 2 milligrams of CBD for every pound of weight. Now that's the starting point. Now you want to get to the 3 to 4 milligram mark, and this we found courtesy of Paige Figge and Charlotte, and how she has tested with her over the past many months, 6 or 7 months here. And but you start out getting them used to any new medication. You're not going to start out with a shotgun blast. So having said that, I want Jesse to talk and answer your question a little bit more pointed, and Jen, as far as the dosing goes and the levels and how they come up with those.
That's a really good question. I'm going to refer back to Chris Stubbs, who we will all miss right now. He said recently that your endocannabinoid system in your body needs to sort of be tricked. So you can start on a dosage that other people have used before for their child. And that's the beautiful thing about the page that Rebecca Brown has started, is that you can talk to parents that are doing it. But they change it pretty consistently because their child gets used to it. and they don't always go up. They can go lower as well. So that's a really good question, but really to answer that, it's really watching how your child reacts to it. And we're changing it constantly for Paige, for Zakai, and for many of the other kids that we have. We change it constantly. So I wouldn't say that they take 30 milligrams or whatever it may be.
And the good news is they can't die from it. So
exactly.
Don't feel scared. I mean, of course, you're going to have anxiety. But again, you have to remember there has never, that anyone knows of, been a death. So it's a little bit easier to handle than, let's say, popping more Vicodin.
It's a lot easier, it's a lot more easier to handle as well when you're dealing with CBD as opposed to THC.
Absolutely,
sure.
You wouldn't want to play with that. I mean, THC.
Again,
can
you can't die from it.
Ruin your day.
Right.
Sure.
And guys, I'm sorry I got to interrupt. I want to get to the last part of her question. She also has another question that was just great. So thank you, Jessica. Hopefully we'll get to that a little bit later with Dr. Shackelford. But this is the last part of her question. Which method is most effective? Oral, inhalation? What is the most effective way of administering this medication? Somebody's phone's ringing. Jen.
Well, it's my old phone. I'm totally sorry.
Oh, it's her old phone.
Totally not cool. You know what? This is a really good question for Dr. Shack, who has just joined us, to answer.
Yeah,
if he'd be willing to.
And let me lead off with a quick answer to this. When we're dealing with children with Dravet and we're talking about a 4-year-old, your 4-year-old here, Jessica, oral is certainly the most prevalent way, not inhalation, not vaporization, certainly not smoking. This is the way that our kids take it. We mix this, pre-mix to a ratio for our kids. And it's mixed with either olive oil or honey. Honey tends to be a lot easier for the child to ingest, and it's administered under the tongue. It doesn't taste great. CBD doesn't taste good. We'll be working on maybe trying to make it taste like Flintstones vitamins or something.
Oh no,
in the future. Yeah, gummy bears. But for the time being, it is an oral ingestion. And we're going to get to more of these questions, and I'm really sorry we have to take a break here. We're going to be back with Heather Jackson, and we've got Dr. Shackelford for the next hour, and I haven't seen him in a long time. And Doc, it's going to be good to have you on here in just a few minutes. So we'll be back here on American Weed Realm Radio. Thank you.
The Hemp Connoisseur is Colorado's premier guide to hemp culture. Our mission is to elevate the image of the medical cannabis and hemp industries to create widespread acceptance of the cannabis sativa plant. You can find the latest issue of the Hemp Connoisseur at more than 200 7-Elevens, your favorite dispensary, MMJ doctor offices, and tattered covered bookstores. Do you consider yourself a cannabis connoisseur? Then come be a part of the Hemp Connoisseur's first cannabis championship. Visit us at thcmag.com for info on how to sample the best medicine Colorado has to offer.
The law offices of Edson, Maton, and Matz provide criminal defense, medical marijuana defense, and advice about setting up and running medical marijuana centers, optional premises cultivation operations, and infused product manufacturing businesses throughout Colorado. With offices in Denver and Aspen, we can offer assistance throughout the entire state of Colorado. Give us a call at 303-831-8188. That's 303-831-8188. Or visit us online at warrenedson.com.
Are you a medical marijuana patient or interested in finding out how to become one? Contact Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. Conveniently located on Hamden and Tamarack in the Whole Foods parking lot behind Proof of the Pudding. Mile High Wellness offers a wide variety of edibles, hashes, and some of Colorado's top strains. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. 3525 South Tamarack, Suite 110, on the corner of Hamden and Tamarack. 720-382-8516. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern.
Hi, I'm Josh Stanley.
And I'm Jesse Stanley.
Two of the brothers here from National Geographic's American Weed, and we'd like to invite you to come into our dispensaries in Colorado Springs. Come in for the most pure organic strain selection in Colorado. It's all hand-grown by the Stanley brothers, especially for our patients. So come in and visit us at our two locations, East Platte and West Colorado. And remember,
always be kind to each other.
I'm Gary Johnson, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio, and I want to say, talk it up, Colorado.
Are you a runner? Are you a runner who supports marijuana legalization? Run on Grass is a group of athletes actively seeking to change our marijuana laws. We speak the truth about cannabis, bringing the message through our feet to new ears. Check out runongrass.com to find out more about us, our events, and how to join up or how to sponsor a runner. If you're in the Denver area, please join us for runs or start a group in your area. Running not your thing? Any sport can do it on grass. Runongrass.com.
Welcome back, everyone. American Weed Realm Radio. Josh Stanley here, your host, here with Jesse Stanley and the rat on his chin. And we've got joining us now Dr. Shackelford. Good
evening, everybody.
It's been a while, my friend.
It has. Altogether too long. But, there's good stuff happening, and that's always helpful.
Yeah. We've all been out of town a little bit.
We have,
as of late.
yes.
Sometimes it takes, you have to take a little bit of a step back.
At times, and it's kind of, I would not say it's a move back, it's more of a reconsolidation. And sometimes the batteries need to be recharged too, as we all know. Running on three ends of the candle is sometimes difficult.
It's not easy. Yeah. Well, folks, we're going to get back into some of these questions here. And again, I want to thank you, Jessica, for your questions. And you also had another question we're going to try to get to here at the back of the hour. And what I'd like to do, I'd like to talk just a little bit about, well, actually, you know what? Since we have so many questions, let me see if I can get to some of these here. Let's see. We have got, okay, I got a question here, and this is a really good question. This is Bart Kilpatrick. Bart, I want to thank you for the question, and we'll do our best here to answer this. Bart says, are you using dried material to make the oil? If so, how do you dry and cure after harvest to preserve or maximize the CBD content? That's the first part of the question. That's an excellent question, and I think there's so many mysteries surrounding this type of business, and how exactly do we come up with this? And many, more often than not, I hear people say, "Oh my goodness, look at all of these plants, and you're going to use all of that, and every bit of this plant is medicine." And that's not the case. To those of you, especially parents in the group that are not familiar, the part of the plant that is used is what we affectionately call the flower, okay, or the bud, and that is the portion of the plant that would be almost likened to a cancer, okay, and that's really essentially what it is. They're not we force flower these plants, okay? As medical marijuana and marijuana growers, we have to force flower and force these buds to become abnormally large. And when you see them occurring in nature, you're not going to see flowers like you see in a commercial harvest. But that's the only part of the plant that's actually used currently for the medication. Now, I believe that in the future we're going to be able to be bringing more of the CBNs and CBAs and things like that out of the stalk and the stems, because there is quite a bit of that material, but we're not to that point yet. So back to the question here. Are you using dried material to make the oil? The answer to that question is yes, we do use dried material. The reason that we use dried material is because if you were to take any bud off of a medical marijuana plant and you were to put that into, let's say, a cooking mix, okay, or you were to take that bud and you were to eat the raw bud, or you were to take the bud and you were to juice the raw bud, you're not going to get the medicinal benefit that you're after typically. Now, raw juicing buds has been shown very beneficial for ulcers and digestive issues that we're starting to see. Now, we haven't really gotten into that, but the reason that we use dried material is because the curing process is actually what brings about the activates the cannabinoids, okay, or in every case brings about the active tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the THC or the delta 9, and that's what activates the plant to its psychoactive effect and largely its medicinal effects, especially whenever we're dealing with cancer oils and things of that nature. And so the process that people go through to cure, people have all kinds of different methods to their madness and how they cure. We do a cure process that right when the plant is harvested, okay, when it's cut out of the ground, it goes into our pre-trim room, okay? So the plant is hung upside down, and then it's what we call defanned. So we go through and you have all kinds of fan leaves, okay? And these are the leaves that are surrounding the actual plant itself. And the reason that we do this is because during the dry process, the medicinal aspect of the plant, obviously, as I said earlier, is not in the leaves. It's in the actual flower. So if you don't do defanning before you do your actual cure, which I'll talk about in a minute, those leaves get stuck on to the actual medicinal bud itself. And then once that's dried, once you cut away those leaves, you're losing a lot of the medicinal aspect, or that can tear away at a lot of the cannabinoids, the CBDs and the THCs and the things on the bud itself. So after we've done our defanning, then they go into a very dark and a very dry environment with a limited, just a perfect amount of airflow. And that's the curing process. Once those buds are cured, then they're taken, and then all of the rest of the leaf matter is then trimmed around the buds. Ideally, that is the optimal way to make the oil. But there are two ways to make the oil, and there are two systems and two different products that we'll use for that. During the final trim process, we're trimming away a lot of the excess leaf matter, but in that process, you get a lot of what we call shake or trim that falls down where you're trimming.
Sweet leaf.
It's called sweet leaf, yes. And so what happens whenever that material falls down, essentially what that is are the pure cannabinoid crystals that consist of your CBDs and your THCs and your CBNs and all of these very beneficial cannabinoids. So if anyone is doing this properly, okay, and I want to encourage any of you parents that have asked questions to do this at home. When you have a strain, like for example, we talked about it earlier, a sour tsunami. If you have different plants in your garden that you're harvesting, make sure that you trim each one of those plants separately, and you keep that sweet leaf or that trim that's fallen from your trimming, keep that separate, because that's very important. You don't want to mix your trims together, because you can certainly make oil from your sweet leaf trim, and in fact, it's just as high as your raw flower in many cases. Higher. Sometimes it's actually higher. But if you combine all of your different types of plants together, you're never going to really understand your ratios, and you're never going to really understand which particular plant works for whatever condition it is you're dealing with. So I hope that answers that question for you. I'm going to move on to the next here. How do we dry and cure after harvest to preserve or maximize CBD content? It's really the same way, but in the CBD, this is a different category altogether, and I'm just going to speak of the way that my brothers, the Stanley brothers, and I do this. We harvest the plants that we have developed, Charlotte's Web and Cigna, and all of our high CBD strains. Now, we do not take those strains and do what I just described, which would be a traditional trim. Why is that? Because we have no interest in selling that raw CBD product on a 20-to-1 ratio on the open market. One, it doesn't sell, okay? Two, it's and it should sell, and I think it will in the future as more people become aware of CBD, but it can be much more beneficially used as the way that we do it, which is we use the whole flower of our CBD plants to create the oil for our Dravet kids, for our epileptic kids, for cancer patients, MS, so on and so forth. And so with our CBD plants, it's really a moot point because we're not as concerned with the presentation of the actual product itself for the end user, because it all goes into making the oil. Okay, second part to your question, Bart, here is also which parts of the plant have you found to be highest in CBD to use for making the oil? Very easy. That is the actual buds itself. Now, as I said earlier, there is quite a surprising amount of CBD or cannabidiol in stems and in branches. But the extraction process for that right now and the adequate press that you would need for that, it's just not there. So the highest content of CBD you're going to find is in the buds.
But I will say that the CBD that you see out there, I don't want to shout it out, but most of the CBD forms you see out there are from the stem. They're not from the bud, which is unfortunate, but that's really the only way that they can do it.
Well, expound on that just a little bit more, because folks, what Jesse I think is saying, most of the CBD products that you're finding out there are in the stems because they're hemp products.
Exactly. America, it's illegal to grow hemp as well, but we are the #1 importers of hemp, clothing, all kinds of other things, and it's not even close how much we import. And I don't want to get into all the things that we can make because we only have an hour left or whatever. But most people use a hemp quality stem whenever they give you CBD. Very seldom do you see CBD from a high CBD strain used because most people don't have them. There's very few. For every THC strain there is out there, for every 1,000 of them, there's one.
Maybe one.
I don't even know. So that's their way of doing it, which is still good, but it is not the same concentrate that we could see in the future with some research and development.
And I think what we might see, and Doc, you and I have talked about this, and I'm speculating, but I think that what we might see in the future is we're going to see that the extraction methods that are taken from hemp, there seems to be, at least as far as the effects go, and what we've seen for people that try hemp CBD versus the CBD that's grown in the regular female plant. Like, for example, the Charlotte's Web or the Harlequin or whichever one of the strains it is, there's a bit of a chemical difference in those.
Well, there shouldn't be. I mean, cannabidiol should be cannabidiol, and the difference may well be other things.
Yes, that's what I mean, different cannabinoids.
Yes, there may be other. Typically, though, the ratio of cannabinoids is the same in each part of the plant because that's genetically determined. Any individual strain or individual plant or genetically identical sibling of that plant.
But not a hemp versus a...
No, that's precisely right. But that particular variety of hemp would have the same concentration of all these different cannabinoids in all parts of the plant, just that the actual amounts would vary. So hemp, I actually wasn't aware that you can bring in unprocessed hemp into the United States. I thought you had to bring in finished product.
I wasn't aware of that either. But it's happening.
Evidently, it's happening.
And our producers nod his head. So yeah, it's happening. I wasn't aware of that either, Doc. I mean,
so it's news to me that people would be processing hemp stock in order to extract the CBD, and I think this is really new frontier stuff as well, because we have not really investigated hemp as a source of useful, potentially medicinally applicable or medicinally useful products, though CBD clearly is that. The question, as we know, from THC and CBD's interactions, the question is what are we going to see with the other cannabinoids that would be found in hemp in differing ratios and their effect on the biological or physiological impact that CBD itself has. Because I do think that what we observe from cannabis in general, medicinal or industrial physiologic effects, are based in part, perhaps in large part, on the polypharmacy aspect of it. One thing doesn't give you the same results as you get from all of the things together. That we may be seeing that with the impact of these other non-specified cannabinoids derived from hemp.
Right. So we haven't scratched the surface. I mean,
we aren't even close to getting the needle close to the surface yet.
Well put. All right, guys. Let's see. We have a couple other incredible questions, and Doc, we're going to get to these here in a little bit. We're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to be back with Heather Jackson, and we're real excited to have her on the show and hear about Zakai and his progress and the journey. And then we got some incredible questions, and then Doc, I'm going to kind of open it up to you because I know you have a lot to say tonight, and some of these questions are really directed at you.
Okay.
And I'm excited that you're here. So folks, sit tight, and I know there's a presidential debate on, but I guess I tell you what.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. This show is where you need to be. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Are you a medical marijuana patient or interested in finding out how to become one? Contact Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. Conveniently located on Hamden and Tamarack in the Whole Foods parking lot behind Proof of the Pudding. Mile High Wellness offers a wide variety of edibles, hashes, and some of Colorado's top strains. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. 3525 South Tamarack, Suite 110, on the corner of Hamden and Tamarack. 720-382-8516. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern.
Hi, Josh Stanley here from National Geographic's American Weed. I'm here with my brothers, and we've just recently put together a foundation in Colorado to allow for cancer patients and other patients of debilitating conditions to be able to get a hold of cannabis-based oil that's just about free of charge. I've just about had it with seeing sick patients suffer needlessly just because they can't afford the proper medication. That's what the Realm of Caring is going to change. Visit therealmofcaring.com. The website will be complete and up on 4/20 of 2012. But until then, please contact any of us Stanley brothers directly through email. You can get us at gratefuljosh@hotmail.com. Now come on, Colorado. We need to take care of each other. Join the Realm. That's realmofcaring.com. Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Josh Stanley.
And I'm Jesse Stanley.
Two of the brothers here from National Geographic's American Weed, and we'd like to invite you to come into our dispensaries in Colorado Springs. Come in for the most pure organic strain selection in Colorado. It's all hand-grown by the Stanley brothers, especially for our patients. So come in and visit us at our two locations, East Platte and West Colorado. And remember,
always be kind to each other.
California's Attorney General has determined that the Repeal Cannabis Prohibition Act will save hundreds of millions of dollars from our overburdened justice system while creating hundreds of millions in new tax revenues from new sustainable jobs and industries that are friendly to our environment. But we can't do it without your help. We are seeking your donations to get on the ballot. Please go to repealcannabisprohibition.org to learn more about how you can help. It's time to end the war on cannabis and hemp in California. It's time to end the madness. Paid for by Sensible Californians Incorporated.
Let's face it, rules and regulations are complicated, especially in the field of medical marijuana. Let Medical Marijuana 101 help you get through the compliance process. We can also explain to you your employment requirements, your employees, and your business. But our work doesn't stop there. Our experience in cultivation ranges from the design of grow rooms to the diagnosis and resolution of grow problems. Visit us at www.medicalmarijuana101.com or call 303-388-7706. That's 303-388-7706.
I'm Gary Johnson, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio, and I want to say, talk it up, Colorado.
Okay. Hey, guys.
Hello. 3 weeks off will do that to you.
Yeah, 3 weeks off, and I'm a space cadet. Guys, welcome back, American Weed Realm Radio. We have Heather Jackson on the phone. Heather, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Hey, how are you doing tonight?
Doing wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's an honor to have you on, and I really appreciate you doing this. And I want to make sure that everyone knows it's very important as we deal with uncharted territory, especially in the realm of medicinal cannabis and children. Even though non-psychoactive, for the most part, we need to make sure and let everyone know we do have your permission to talk about you and your journey on this. So I really want to thank you for agreeing to come on. So thanks.
You bet. You bet.
Heather, I want to talk just a little bit about, and I don't want to talk much, I want you to talk, but I want to hear, and I think everyone else really wants to hear, a lot of the parents that have become part of the pediatric group on Facebook, and so many more people are beginning to email us for the Realm of Caring from out of state, wondering what it is they can do. And there's just a lot of unknowns. And let's back up. Before you met the Stanley brothers of the Realm of Caring, let's just talk a little bit about what did you think about the whole medical marijuana phenomenon?
Honestly, I wasn't real familiar with it. I don't keep up with any of that, and it was basically we just got to the end of our pharmaceutical rope and weren't really sure where to turn next. And so, I'm very connected within the epilepsy community, and so just started talking with parents and that sort of thing, and found that there were some parents that were using this, and then started my own research journey. And there's actually a ton more research CBD and cannabis than I could ever find on, most any of the pharmaceuticals that I've tried on my son. So.
Did you think, I get a lot of questions from parents that say, gosh, I can't even really get my mind comfortable with the idea of giving my child even a cannabidiol type of a treatment that comes from a cannabis plant. Did you ever think for a minute that this could possibly be a solution for your son?
No, not really. And in fact, unless I was living it, I can't believe that it's happening. So, no. So I think it's good for parents to look at these different options and do what they're comfortable with. I think everybody's got to make their own decision. But I tell you what, after looking at the safety profile and really what I came to realize is I'm dealing with a plant, an organic plant. And when you tell people, if you start with telling people that, I'm giving my son an organic plant that has anti-inflammatory properties, it's an antioxidant, it's a neuroprotectant, it has, virtually stopped his seizures, they will pat you on the back. But as soon as you mention that it's cannabis, then, every notion, whatever they think and carry with them about it, then they're like, oh.
Isn't that?
So it's been interesting because I am, a Christian conservative. And so I had to, sort of get out of my box a little bit. But I tell you what, it's a lot easier than watching the Kai Seas.
Yeah. I can certainly understand that. Now, we get the same thing a lot as well. When people ask us, oh, what is it that you do? Once we kind of lead in with that we work with botanical substances that stop, or hinder and halt the progression of epilepsy and potentially, many other diseases. And people, oh my goodness, wow, that's just incredible. What do you call this plant? Cannabis.
And they turn around and walk
they're
away.
Gone. Yeah. Until they've walked a mile in your shoes, though, Heather.
Right.
That
and the people
that's
that
important.
that are closest to us and that love us and that have seen Zakai through this journey, they've been overwhelmingly supportive. I think it's the people that don't get it, who have not seen him at his worst, who don't really understand, that are a little bit more, judgmental.
Mm-hmm. There's even a lot of disbelief, and once you do talk about the results, so I want to talk just a little bit about that. Can you kind of take us on the progression of? I remember the first time that you and I spoke on the phone, months back, I believe beginning of the summer, and asking great questions about this. Can you kind of take us through the history of Zakai getting on this medicine?
Sure. Zakai started having seizures when he was 4 months old. And he has several different seizure types, and he can have hundreds, and at his worst, he would have thousands. We did an EEG, which is just a scan of the electrical activity in the brain. The end of 2008 was showing 200 clinical seizures that we could see an hour. So you can imagine, you can't really figure out. I say he's had over 500,000 seizures because it's less melodramatic than trying to figure out how many he's actually really had. So he's had a really rough go of it. He's got a rare syndrome called Doza syndrome, which it's a sister diagnosis really to Dravet, and there can be, there's a spectrum to the disorder. So there's some mild cases, and then there's some severe cases like Zakai. And we were to the point, when I called you, we were to the point where we were using, we've been through, my list shows 17 anti-epileptic drugs. He's 9.
Oh my
There's only 24 on the market.
How old is Zakai?
He's 9.
9 years old and 17 different drugs.
17 drugs and very high-dose steroids for a very long period of time. In fact, when he started steroids, he was 29 pounds. When at his zenith, he was 66 pounds on steroids, and he has cataracts as a result of that. And they did stop the seizures. And so that was one of the very intriguing things to me about cannabis is the anti-inflammatory properties, because, steroids is an anti-inflammatory as well. It's the only thing that's ever really helped him. So, that was sort of my thinking. When I had first called you, we started using his emergency medication as a maintenance drug, because the EEG prior to me calling you showed subclinical activity. Subclinical activity is basically the brain's firing off a seizure, but you're not seeing anything physically. So this was happening every 10 seconds during the day, and 2 or 3 times more frequently than that at night. And so, as you can imagine, this really disrupts life, obviously, learning, retention, toileting, has autistic tendencies, because I believe he wouldn't have those if it wasn't for medications and seizures. So that was sort of where we were at. We were at the end of our pharmaceutical rope. We were on one medication that did pretty well for him, called Zerontin, and we were using his lorazepam, which is a benzo class of drugs, as a maintenance drug, which we normally just use for emergencies. But he was getting really bad, and we weren't really sure, what else we were going to do. And we were on the equivalency of 10, for the epilepsy community, they'll understand, we were on the equivalency of, 10 to 15 milligrams of Diastat. We were giving that daily. That's like 3 times an emergency dose for him. And the answer was, when the seizures kept coming, was to, give him more. Well, I really wasn't interested in that. By that time, we were having, between 60 and 250 seizures every night. And these were really hard. They're myoclonic seizures, so not tonic-clonic like, Paige and Charlotte, but they're brief, but they're violent. Like I describe it as, you expect someone to, put the paddles on his chest and yell clear. I mean, just a real, like a full-body electrocution type seizure. So very disruptive to his sleep. And that's when I called you. And within a month, we had started treatment. We've been going since July 19th. The night before we started, he had close to 200 seizures. The night we started, he had none. 0. Not anything. I should have warned you guys I'm a crybaby, so hopefully I won't.
Well, you're not alone.
Heather,
not alone
the three grown men on the radio here with you bawl our eyes out. And when we just saw the videos you sent of Zakai, trust me, I've had to cancel appointments.
And I knew it wasn't a fluke. I don't believe in coincidence. I knew that it was his CBD. And I knew a lot of people needed this accumulative effect, but we have not seen that. We see results right away. His next night was seizure free. And then they kind of started to sneak back in, maybe, 5 or a dozen, down from 60 to 200, So that's where we're at. We've just been adjusting, ratio and adjusting his dosing and trying to find a nice, good fit for him.
How do you feel like that journey has been working with us and trying to find the ratio? I know it takes a lot of patience because, again, you're on uncharted ground. We're on uncharted ground here, and we're kind of tiptoeing in a dark room. But has it been overall a pretty satisfying experience in working to fine-tune this?
Oh, completely. I'm humbled and incredibly grateful for the groundwork that's been laid before me, not only by the other parents, but by what you all are doing. I knew where to start through milligrams. Through CannLabbs, I knew exactly what I was giving him. Through the research, I knew the safety profile. It's been, really seamless. Even the application process, talking, to get his red card, which is what you need in Colorado, we had his card in 35 days, less than 35 days. So, I mean, this whole thing has just been like, it's just been a blessing. So, yeah, we've just played with the ratio. He actually does better on a little bit higher. We've been as high as 5.3 milligrams of CBD per pound, and he's super clear on that.
Wow. Have you found it all? I get reports from other parents that the medicine can almost give a focus to the child, or as maybe an Adderall would do for ADD, that this kind of gives them a little bit more of a focus in everyday life.
Yeah, definitely. I wish that my doctor would have called me back today. We did an EEG 2 weeks ago, and I wanted to see what that subclinical activity looked like, because the Kai is, some of the videos I sent you, he's retaining what we're trying to teach him. So he is toileting for the first time.
Awesome.
And we had to go buy him his big boy underwear.
So he's right.
What's that?
All right. I love that. That's awesome. I love underwear.
He is. And he's, we would learn things, and then we would have an episode, and he would lose things. So it was like, you teach, and he might get it, and a couple days later it's gone. So now when we play Slug Bug, he's got the color right. So he's retaining his colors, and he's toileting, and his learning, he was counting. He's just doing really, exciting things for us, and he's hanging on to it. He's able to, learn. It's incredible.
Wow, Heather, that's just amazing. It's absolutely unbelievable. In a sense, you feel like you're getting your boy back that you've always wanted.
Well, and that's the thing, is unlike some other parents, who maybe seizures started later, I'm learning who he is. He's had seizures his entire life. So I've never known Zakai without all this seizure activity. So it's actually really incredible. It's like he's waking up, and I'm falling in love with him, every day more and more and more.
Oh, Heather, that's just wonderful.
And he's funny. He's hilarious. He's got this. It's just so incredible. And he calls me his sweet potato now. You're my sweet potato mom. And today he told me seriously. I'm like counting. I'm like, that's 4 syllables. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And in the back of my mind, I don't want, I'm thinking, I hope this doesn't stop,
I know. I can certainly understand that fear. It doesn't show any signs of stopping, with all the other kids that we're working with.
That's what I'm looking. Yeah,
we keep that faith, and Heather, you can actually help us answer some of these questions that parents have sent in, and I know every parent on that group that has experienced, especially working with my brothers and I, and the oil that we make, and the plants that we bred for your kids are incredibly helpful to these parents. So I want to thank you for that for sure. But let's talk just a little bit about the program, about the realm of caring, and about the oil itself. Okay, a lot of people ask us, does the oil taste good? And I tell them it's the last thing in the world you want to eat. Do you want to comment a little bit on that?
Yeah, Zakai doesn't swallow pills, and so we're not able to put it in a capsule for him to swallow. And so you all mix it with a honey and put it in a syringe, and we warm the syringe up in a warm cup of water, and I warm the spoon up inside the cup, and I just squirt out his dosing on the spoon, and he, down the hatch. And it tastes really terrible. And he will usually, he says, do I have to take the spoon? And I say yes. And so this is the deal, dude. We have to take it. So he'll spoon it, he'll gag, and then he'll swallow it, and he'll take a drink of water, and he's fine. But no, it's terrible. It really does taste terrible.
We won't give out anything that we have not tried ourselves, and we all have our licenses and our cards. And I tell you what, I ate it one time, and I did a beeline for the sink. I mean, it was absolutely horrendous. And so, we are working on the gummy bear flavor or the Flintstones flavor. Once we really get this dialed in, of course, that is coming. I want to talk a little bit about your perspective a lot of parents that contact us inside the state of Colorado, one of the first questions is, of course, because epilepsy medicine in general is very, very expensive, and steroids can be very expensive. And what we provide to you, could you? Because so many people, well, gosh, I don't know if we're going to be able to afford this. Can you talk a little bit about how much we charge for the oil?
Sure. Last time I went in to pick up, I paid 34 cents. Okay. And that was, I believe, Jesse made that last batch, and it's lasted close to 3 weeks, maybe longer.
Man,
so yeah, it was it was more milligrams per milliliter, and so it's lasted us a little bit longer. So yeah, a whopping 34 cents, and if you can't scrounge around to find enough pennies for that, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, I'll give it to you.
Yeah. Well,
and I think that's only because you can't give it away completely for free.
That's right.
The 34 cents, that is, I'll give it to you.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's a bidding war. Yeah, we in our heart, we would love to give it away for free. The state regulations do not allow us to do that. So 34 cents. What now? I have to think, what is that comparable to the pharmaceutical costs? I wonder for 3 weeks, Is he doing better? Are you able to begin taking him off some of the pharmaceuticals?
Yes, we basically traded our CBD for for his benzo. So he's totally off that huge lorazepam dose, and so we're just now on the one medication that. We'll see how this last EEG looked, and I'm hoping we can come down a little bit on that, because he has to stay almost at a toxic level for it to help him. And so it's not good, obviously, for him to be that high. So we're hoping to come down on that a little bit as soon as we can as well.
Oh, that's wonderful news. Could you do me a big favor when you have videos like him humming and calling you sweet potato and things like that? The 34 cents is obviously not why my brothers and I have bred this plant for 2 years and get this to you. Although I mean, 32, it'll buy a nice cup of tea in China, but. We do this because we like to see the progress, and when we get those videos, that's something that's so close to my brothers, my family, Dr. Shackelford, to all of our hearts. Yeah. And I want to thank you first for sharing those, and I want to ask you to please keep them coming.
I will.
Do you have anything that you could say in wrapping up here to the parents or anybody that's considering whether or not they have a child that's in need with epilepsy, or whether or not it's an adult that may have this affliction? Is there any advice that you might give to anyone?
I think that we need to, break down the stigma that's associated with it. And, most importantly, to hang on to hope, and that feelings are not facts. And I know that a lot of parents they feel like they're in hopeless situations, and they don't. That's not the fact. That's not the fact. I felt like that, and I just felt like this was just never going to end. We've been dealing with this almost a decade. If you can imagine just watching your child seize every day for for that long, you get pretty beat up and you feel pretty hopeless, and that's just not the fact of the situation. And I think that parents need to really be open-minded, and anybody needs to be open-minded. And I believe that you will know relatively quickly. That's what I tell parents. This isn't like anti-epileptic drugs where you have to wait these long periods of time. I mean, you're gonna probably know right away.
Well, I want to applaud you for your courage and being able to take that step, and all of the other parents that have done that with us. And Heather, I want you to know how much of a blessing that you and your family and Zekiah are to us. What you've given us is immeasurable, and Zekiah is in our thoughts and prayers constantly. We want to thank you for everything that you do.
And I think it's hilarious that you thank me. I leave the dispensary and they're saying thank you, and Mandy says thank you, and I'm like, that's hilarious to me. Thank you so much for what you guys are doing. I cannot thank you enough. Sakai is just a totally different kid.
Well, we're going to continue on. We are just getting warmed up. And so, again, I do have to thank you. I thank you for being a part of our lives. And I hope you'll come back on the show again real soon.
You bet.
Have a wonderful night, Heather.
Thanks so much, Heather.
All right, good night.
Okay, folks, after we dry our tears here, I want to thank Heather. Thanks so much for coming on the show tonight, and all the other parents out there. Guys, please send in your questions. We'll do our best to get to them every week. We're going to take a very short break, and we're going to come back, Dr. Shackelford, for our segment of Ask Dr. Shack. We're going to get some Kleenex, wipe our tears, and we will see you in a few minutes on American Weed Realm Radio.
Hi, Josh Stanley here from National Geographic's American Weed. I'm here with my brothers, and we've just recently put together a foundation in Colorado to allow for cancer patients and other patients of debilitating conditions to be able to get a hold of cannabis-based oil that's just about free of charge. I've just about had it with seeing sick patients suffer needlessly just because they can't afford the proper medication. That's what the Realm of Caring is going to change. Visit therealmofcaring.com. The website will be complete and up on 4/20 of 2012. But until then, please contact any of us Stanley brothers directly through email. You can get us at gratefuljosh@hotmail.com. Now come on, Colorado. We need to take care of each other. Join the Realm. That's realmofcaring.com. Thank you so much.
Are you a runner? Are you a runner who supports marijuana legalization? Run on Grass is a group of athletes actively seeking to change our marijuana laws. We speak the truth about cannabis, bringing the message through our feet to new ears. Check out runongrass.com to find out more about us, our events, and how to join up or how to sponsor a runner. If you're in the Denver area, please join us for runs or start a group in your area. Running not your thing? Any sport can do it. On grass. Runongrass.com. Let's face it, rules and regulations are complicated, especially in the field of medical marijuana. Let Medical Marijuana 101 help you get through the compliance process. We can also explain to you your employment requirements, your employees, and your business. But our work doesn't stop there. Our experience in cultivation ranges from the design of grow rooms to the diagnosis and resolution of grow problems. Visit us at www.medicalmarijuana101.com or call 303-388-7706. That's 303-388-7706.
I'm Gary Johnson, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio, and I want to say, talk it up, Colorado.
Welcome back, American Weed Realm Radio. That was a short break here, and I'm excited to welcome back to the show, and hopefully he can be here every week. My very, very close friend, Dr. Alan Shackelford.
Well, good evening.
Doc, it's so good to see you again, and the questions have really been piling up. But I want to focus on one that I got last minute, and it happens to come from the same person that sent us the questions at the beginning of the show. Her name is Jessica, and Jessica, thank you for this question. This is a very, very important question, and we get asked this all the time, and I think you've put it in a very good way. So we're going to kind of break this down just a little bit, and I'm not the person that can adequately answer this, but Doc, you are. So Jessica says, let's see, is there any advice on how to get a doctor to give a prescription or recommendation, especially when it's for a child? We live in Canada, so I realize it may be a bit of a different process, but still any advice would be greatly appreciated.
Canada has had medical marijuana legislation on a national level for a number of years. Pardon me. And it essentially says that Health Canada has determined that, with, of course, legislative approval, that cannabis has medicinal benefits and under certain conditions can be used essentially with suspension of the laws that prohibit its use, which is not vastly different from most American states that have medical marijuana legislation on the books and those that are considering it. There are very great similarities, actually, in that regard. So it suspends the criminalization of use of cannabis for medical purposes for specific conditions. So it doesn't matter if you live in New Brunswick or PEI or Alberta or British Columbia. You have exactly the same access if you have one of those conditions. I don't know that Health Canada actually makes any limitations on age of patients. Some states here in this country do. Colorado, for example, allows patients under 18 to use cannabis, but it requires the evaluation and written recommendation from 2 physicians in order for that minor child, that minor individual, to use it. The question of, I think it's a bigger question, how to get a doctor to make a recommendation. First, there has to be a compelling medical reason. I think the conditions in Canada mirror those in the United States, or many of those states that have medical marijuana legalization. Those include conditions like cancer and HIV or AIDS, seizures, glaucoma. Some states are more specific. They allow PTSD. Some new pending legislation also specifies specifically PTSD and other medical conditions such as Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, Lou Gehrig's disease or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, and others. Colorado is quite specific in limiting the conditions to cancer, HIV infection or AIDS, glaucoma, extreme weight loss, severe pain, severe nausea, seizures, and persistent muscle spasms. And under that umbrella of severe pain, for example, migraine headaches can be treated. So can conditions such as dysmenorrhea or PMDD under the severe pain or persistent spasms. And so in the case of a child, the compelling medical reason really is what is the condition, how has this person responded to conventional treatments, and if incompletely, how has that been documented? And you're quite fortunate in Canada to have universal health care. Anyone with a medical ailment gets treated, no exceptions. If you wish to consult a physician, you can do so. Yes, there are some problems, but and I've spoken about this before, in the United States, infant mortality is higher than in Cuba, of all things, and that is primarily because of difficult access to health care for children, which is, this is a political season in this country, and I think it's important for people to realize that we don't necessarily have the best health care in the world.
We're number 37.
Yes, 37th overall. We have excellent health care for a few, mediocre health care for many, and no health care for millions of people. Let's look at prevention of death from treatable causes. We've spoken about this before. The United States is 19th out of 19 industrial nations. Canada is number 7, which means there are 6 other countries that do a better job than Canada, but being number 7 is not a bad place to be. In terms of access to health care, so the problem, of course, with medicine in general is that doctors are quite conservative. We are taught to practice evidence-based medicine. We look for the evidence. What's the research? What tells me that the treatment that I'm contemplating for this person with this medical condition is, in fact, safe and effective? And we look for the kinds of research studies that have been done to prove efficacy of any treatment, and they're just not really available for cannabis, at least not readily and easily available for doctors to read and review. So bearing that in mind can go a long way toward helping your child's doctor or your own doctor, for anyone not considering this for a child, understand how cannabis could be used effectively for a medical condition for which it can be recommended in Canada. I think that the question goes on, does it not, Josh?
It does, and Jessica continues to add, which is a great point here. A lot of the responses that she gets from the doctors are, quote, let's see, there's no evidence that this helps epilepsy. I can lose my license. Let's see, there are no studies like the ones that have been done on medications such as Topamax, which the doctor prescribes. But she wonders, is that true? And that leads me into maybe something you can answer, Doc, about what we can do more to help to build the evidence
the bridge connections between certain neurologists that we're beginning to work with here in Colorado with these children who are dumbfounded. I don't know what else the word is.
That's a good word.
At the results that we're getting with these kids. And I think that, without going into too much detail because we're not there yet, but a lot of the plans that we have for the future would be to do just that, to build this referral database of doctors and get them connected to where there's not this fear, but they know that they're not the first person that's doing these things.
Yes, we'll address some of those latter points here in a second. In terms of answering those specific concerns that your doctor may have voiced, there are no studies that show efficacy. That's not entirely true. There aren't many studies, I'll certainly grant that, but there have been studies on cannabis in seizure disorders in particular, which support its effectiveness. It's important to point out that I think doctors' licenses are protected Canada-wide if they make a determination that under the scope of the medical cannabis legislation that applies in Canada, that this treatment is the most appropriate and effective for this individual. It's no different than prescribing anything else. It falls under exactly the same protections and obligations, of course, on the part of the physician to follow up with that patient, make sure that it's efficacious, make sure there aren't untoward side effects that need to be monitored or that it needs to be changed in some fashion. One of the big concerns, of course, for doctors everywhere is the dosing and how strong, what dosing interval, how to use it. I think one of the wonderful saving graces, if you will, of cannabis as a treatment is that the safety record is absolutely unparalleled for any therapeutically active substance I'm aware of, with no deaths attributable to a cannabis overdose, and the side effect profile being mild at worst and very short-lived at worst as well. And we can talk about those side effects. As with any medication, starting low at a low dose is appropriate, and I think most physicians would agree with that. You don't prescribe an 800 milligram ibuprofen tablet for someone where 200 milligrams would be perfectly appropriate and probably quite sufficient. That applies to anything, including cannabis. In terms of doctors' concerns about smoking, I don't think people ought to be smoking it. That's me. And we have discussions about this periodically. Is smoked marijuana medicine? And I think you have to look at downsides. What are the risks? And it's a bronchial or pulmonary irritant because it's smoke, it's hot, there's nasty stuff in it, carcinogens, carbon monoxide, tar, a bunch of different horrible things. But as I've said before, there is no evidence whatsoever, and a recent epidemiologic study confirmed that there is no evidence of any long-lasting pulmonary problem from smoking marijuana, even for decades. Which is not to say that it's an okay thing to do, because I'm not sure that it is. I think it burns up a lot of what's beneficial in the plant simply because the temperatures are so high. And there are other physiologic implications for inhaling it. I think that oral dosing, as Josh earlier described, is absolutely the more appropriate and probably more effective way to use it. The effects may be longer lasting, but in that, the absorption from the digestive tract is a longer, slower process. So the active components are going to be absorbed over a longer period of time, but they can be very effectively used at night when someone's asleep, and you don't have either the psychoactivity from higher THC content preparations or any of the other potential effects of THC. So in the case of a high CBD content preparation, I don't see any particular problem with oral dosing at any time of the day. I haven't heard any reports of psychoactivity. Now, the way to discuss this with your doctor, I think, is to present him or her with papers that doctors can read and will understand. There are papers. There are scientific literature, and one of these times I'll try to prepare a list of references. One good one, if you're listening, and anyone listening to this should note this, it's from a medical journal called the Journal of Opioid Management. And opioid is spelled O-P-I-O-I-D. It refers to narcotics. The Journal of Opioid Management from May-June 2009. There's a wonderful review article written by a then medical student at the University of Washington and his faculty, sponsors, and colleagues, which looks at the history of cannabis use in particular with regard, one entry is particularly striking with regard to the use of cannabis in seizures. It was first used in the 1100s, so somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 years ago to successfully treat seizures. And he does, the authors cite, and the main author is Sunil Agarwal, a brilliant medical scientist and physician, who cites other medical literature that refers to seizures and many other medical disorders. That's a wonderful paper. Print it out, take it to your doctor, and say, this should be of interest to you. And anyone can do that for other medical conditions as well. There are studies, for example, from the University of Washington, I think from 2007, really a review of the literature on Lou Gehrig's disease and cannabinoid, the impact of cannabinoids on managing that disease, which is invariably fatal. And they concluded that where it is legal to do so, anyone diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease should at least undergo an assessment for using cannabis in the pharmacological or the medical management of this disease, because it is so effective at controlling the symptoms and prolonging life. These are the sorts of things, the sorts of information in medical literature study form that doctors respond to, and I think that's the way to approach that. I'll try to put together some specific literature resources, maybe links you can click on, and we'll try to get them online perhaps, or talk about them in another session.
Doc, we got to close here. We got about another minute, but real quick, do you think it's a possibility or a good idea that the doctors that we're working with now, some of the neurologists, some of these children's neurologists here in Colorado, that are beginning to open their eyes and become very, take a positive stance, I guess, if you will, regarding the administration of the CBD for these kids? I think that there's a way to bridge some of these gaps by getting some of these folks in contact.
I think that's correct. I also think that we are going to be able soon to publish some case studies, which I think will find tremendous interest in the medical community. The big question is access to the information, and it has been difficult heretofore. I think from now on, given the increasing interest in this as a treatment option, access to that information is going to become easier, in part as a result of our experiences with these children and their families, and these neurologists, of course.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Doc. We ran out of time, and that's unfortunate, but that's the way it happens just about every week. We're going to have to sign off here. I want to thank Bart Kilpatrick and Jessica Fournier. I want to thank you for your questions. And I think it is Fournier, Jessica, because she's from Canada, so that would make sense. So, guys, listen, sorry for our absence the last few weeks. We're going to do our best. A lot of times we get bogged down with simply just making the medicine, certainly growing it and administering it. We hope to be able to reach more people in the future and have greater capacity. So we're very much working on that. We have a great show coming next week. Doc, you're going to be able to join us next week?
I think so. And one note to people in Arkansas, consider voting for this legislation. It will change the complexion of medical care in Arkansas and in any other state where medical cannabis is on the ballot.
Arkansas is a huge doorway into medical marijuana.
Massachusetts as well.
Arkansas is the deep south.
And it's a wonderful place.
It's a beautiful place, great people, and you have an opportunity there. So anyone listening from Arkansas, get the word out, guys. We need you. We'll be back next week. Hopefully we have Dr. Shackelford, Science Corner. We've got some great guests in next week. We have Mason DeVert, who has led the initiative on Amendment 64 for the legalization. We're going to talk a little bit about that next week. We also have Stickman coming in from Overgrow the Radio. Awesome. And he always has some really good, nice complaints and grievances and gets people upset. And I like that in a good way. He brings about good arguments. And in the meantime, folks, please send us your questions. You can send them on the Facebook page in the pediatric group if you're a member of that group. If you're not, you can always email questions to myself, Jesse, or Dr. Shackelford at realmofcaring@gmail.com. Okay, and in the meantime, go visit realmofcaring.com. Become a member of the Realm. We need your help, guys, okay? We're going to see you next week, but as always, it just takes one lighthouse to bring in 1,000 ships. Be that lighthouse, guys. We'll see you next week.